Welcome back to another episode, another week of the Dojo Media Show. It is me, Raf, and Logan, well, Logan and Raf, respectively, from Dojo Media Co. And we are joined this week by Prince. Prince Brown is how we should call you. Yeah, that's your Instagram name, Instagram handle. We'll pop it up here so you can give him a follow. Well, I suppose get into, all I know about you really is that you're a teacher and a playwright. So there's got to be a little bit more to you, but which comes first?
Well, I tell you what, I feel like being an artist without a plan B is just, setting yourself up for stress, anxiety, and all the rest of it. So my day job is being a teacher. But before I became a teacher, I was doing sort of theatre. So I was working in theatre. Through working in theatre, I sort of met people and I was able to start putting on my own projects. And I'd been writing for many years prior to that, but being able to be in a space where I could write scripts for movies and plays sort of open up that world. And so now I do both. It's a little bit difficult to be full-time teaching and doing it, but I think thankfully I kind of got into my career a little bit later than some. So I only started working as a teacher when I was 29. So it gave me a lot of time to work on other stuff prior to that.
Yeah. So you are a full-time teacher though? Like it's 5 days a week?
5 days a week, yeah.
And an English teacher?
Well, actually English is supposed to be my main, but I teach less of that than I do philosophy, geography, and history. That's like my main things I actually teach,
Interesting.
I actually thought it was only English, but I was surprised.
Yeah. Well, that's my main subject, but I just, at the moment, I just don't have many of them that I teach,
And what drew you to that? I suppose if you're interested, like when you were working in theatre, was that writing plays as well, or other roles, acting?
Pretty much writing and directing was my main thing. I would act, but that was only because I needed to. So if a role was available and no one else could do it, or for instance, we had a play last year where it was an hour and 20 minutes, and I knew that having a new person who never come in contact with the play or the theme, the content, it would take too long to get them up to the level that need to be at within 6 weeks. So I said, okay, I'll go and do this. So I did it, but I don't necessarily enjoy that. I like to have the sort of bird's eye view, the outside sort of, putting all the pieces together, the puppeteer. I do that.
It helps you write, like knowing how to act as well, though. Doesn't it? You know how to talk.
I tell you what I do. When I write, I'll write the lines and I'll say the lines. I'll say them. So I've still got the rhythm of like, don't touch that phone. How about I say it? Okay, don't touch the phone. Like, I try to like figure out what's natural, how words would sound naturally off the tongue. Yeah.
But if it's easier that way, it must be hard directing and acting at the same time, though. Was that a different challenge?
I've only done it once, and that play had already been shown a number of times prior. So everybody else knew what they were supposed to be doing. And then I had, essentially in that time, I really did assistant directing because for me, how can I know what I look like? For me, at this stage, I don't think I can. So I had other people who were very skilled with what they do, who were previously assistant directors or dramateurs. They came and directed me. Yeah. But I don't try to do everything because I think it's too difficult. And I think I also believe that people who do everything, I think there's a sort of narcissism that can grow. Like I wrote it, I directed it, I produced it, and I acted in it. It's all about me, and it's not really about that. It's just kind of getting the story. Yeah, exactly. Getting the story out there.
So I know I'm pretty sure it was something that you said to him one time.
Okay.
And that was, I can't remember about who specifically, but you kind of said they're not going to, probably not going to succeed as much as they can because they are trying to do so many different things.
Right.
Why do you think that? Is it sort of like you can't be a master of all? Like you do truly have to become a master of one?
I'll tell you what, I think some people have done it, but I think people who are very, 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 very skilled in what they do. I think Denzel Washington, his first film that he directed, Antoine Fisher, I believe, and he was also the main in it. But this was after 15 films. He's done theatre, he's done all that sort of stuff, and he's got to that level. I just think that, it is possible to do it, but I just feel like there's so much that goes into even just writing. There's so much that goes into directing. There's so much that goes into everything. If you're doing on stage, if you're doing a film, what's represented in a particular position on the stage? What does that represent? Or as you guys, film guys, the particular angle. What does that bring out of the character or whatever? And I feel like to do that well at a local level where you're working with less funds, less resources, you kind of need to be really good at what you're doing and focus only on that, I think. I don't know, this is my idea, but maybe somebody can do it.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people have heaps of creative pursuits, especially everyone wants to say they're a photographer.
Right.
Everyone just wants to pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Different reasons. Sometimes just to impress girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all sorts. What are your reasons for doing it then? Like at the heart of it.
Yeah,
Like,
I just love storytelling.
Yeah.
That's the honest truth. From when I was young, when I was a baby, my dad used to, when I was like earliest memory up to like when I was like three or four. My dad used to have me on one side, and my brother on the other side, and him just read us like storybooks, and I'd be so fascinated with what I'm seeing. I'd just be like, seriously, like, oh, Dad, can you read that bit again? And I'll read the story again. And we all remember that from childhood, but I just always consistently love stories,
Yeah.
films, TV shows.
any specific formative ones? Like any really influential?
Oh my gosh, there's so many, but I always find it hard to think of something on the spot.
I suppose what made you interested in plays? Then?
Well, I never really was. I never
Okay.
really was.
You know, he does a lot of like film stuff as well.
Yeah,
As much
yeah.
as
Yeah,
plays.
Right,
Well,
right.
It was only just these circumstance. Like,
Yeah.
So basically, I had, and you know, I'm not really a spiritual person, but I always think that me getting into theatre was kind of a blessing in this sort of. I never thought I would get to that, but I did. So basically, there was a girl. She was a local theatre maker in Brisbane, and I had just come back from the UK, and I was living in Australia, and I wanted to pursue some creative arts, and I didn't know what specifically I wanted to pursue. And then this girl, she was doing local theatre, and I gave her an article that I'd written about something about, I don't know, the African Australian experience or something. And she really liked that, and she messaged me and said, oh, I'm going to do a play, would you like to be involved? And I said, yeah, sure. And as I came to the theatre, I had a natural, like, I sort of knew intuitively which lines would bang and which wouldn't, and sort of really think about the audience as opposed to, you know, when you're writing at home and you're sort of thinking, someone's going to read my meaningful work. It's like really big disconnect. Whereas I knew that if I had the line and I had the actor say it in a particular way, I could make the other actors in the space like laugh or react. And I was like, oh, this is immediate response. I'm getting like, I'm a bit of a extrovert, so I felt like, oh, I get the energy here. So I know now what to write and have that sort of deep connection. That's how I got into theatre. But again, I didn't really watch theatre before that. I didn't think I'd watched the play in like 10 years.
Right.
You know, because I just never thought it was, I just thought it was kind of lame, like theatre, like, oh, guy saying something.
I actually think it is sometimes as well. But what I liked was yours is multicultural and different perspective to the typical play.
Sure.
It's very different. Like I didn't even know something like that would exist in Australia, let alone Brisbane.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, again, I think it comes down to the fact that obviously my perspective is a little bit different to some people in Australia, obviously because obviously I'm of African descent, but I didn't come here through skilled migrants or refugee background. My dad's Caribbean, Jamaican, or my mum's Australian. So coming from the UK, I came here and I've come here a couple of times, but as an adult, I came here because I sort of saw the opportunities here. Like there were spaces like this space where we're at right now. There's so many different spaces in Australia where you could put on events and people would come and watch you. Whereas in London, I felt like it's so difficult to get your foot in the door.
So competitive.
Yeah, it's so competitive, and people are just not gonna leave their house to come and look at your theatre thing. Like if they don't know you, it's like okay, and.
We were saying on the other thing, like a lot of people complain about Brisbane instead of just going out and making stuff.
Yeah.
It's like I like people like yourself that just
Exactly.
Who
Like,
cares?
people here are quite like friendly. They want things to do. So like a flyer in like I don't know what it's like in Melbourne, but in London, a flyer on a wall is not really gonna unless you got that backing. Unless you got
too
some
many
support.
everywhere.
Yeah, it's like I'm not gonna go. Oh my god, wow! I've got like you know what I mean, and come down to a show. Whereas people in Brisbane, they sort of yearning for things to do.
Yeah.
You know, the more things you have, the happier people are.
So how did you find ways to promote it? Was it mainly just word of mouth you found?
Actually,
or?
through Instagram was quite big. Like
We should give it some context. I guess this is your play Dominoes and Rum.
Dominoes and Rum, yeah.
Yeah. So break that down a little bit. Like how big was the production? How long did it take? You wrote like every role you played in it.
Well, I should probably go back to My One Is Yours actually.
That was the first one.
I should probably go back to that because that's before I because that was the longest project I did, Dominoes and Rum, but the first project I did, which actually gave me a bit of attention, a little bit of like made me sort of a bit more well known, was My One Is Yours, which was an almost hour long film based on a toxic relationship in Brisbane. And so my aim was to try to, it was initially supposed to be a 10-minute film, a short film that was just gonna have a couple of local people involved, and we weren't gonna have like, we didn't even know about sound, there's like using mics, we didn't even know about this stuff. We said, we'll just do a little short thing, and then as more people got involved, Backbone Youth Arts, which is the theatre company I was working for, sort of supporting me. More artists, got involved with it. It started becoming bigger projects, and in the end, it was sort of a project that took a year to make. But in the end, had everybody, colorist, two camera operators, just all that sort of stuff that was involved with it. And I think in the end, it was about, in terms of extras and everybody, it was about 60 people. I think in the end.
It's a big risk to make something so long for your first main project.
Yeah.
But how much money do you think you put into this yourself?
It cost about 5,000.
Okay.
But half of that money came from Backbone Youth Arts.
Yeah.
And then the other half came from myself. And then we ended up using this ticket sales, the money we got from ticket sales, to fund Dominoes and Rum.
Okay.
And then we started Dominoes and Rum, which was longer, an hour and 20, but it didn't have the same film aspect. You know what I mean? We didn't have to worry about everything that goes into film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did we get the sound right? Did we get the right take? Oh my God, we've got to go redo stuff. It wasn't really like that. It was sort of
Little
like,
things can happen on the night that happy accidents essentially.
you know exactly
No
what I'm talking
mistakes.
about.
Yeah.
Like
Challenge.
we had a bit in My One Is Yours where we had, and you guys will appreciate this being filmmaker guys, is that we had a table of 4 people sitting around the table, and I had two camera operators, and you film 2 guys, like you film one guy, you film another guy, and then we'll switch. And we filmed it, and I said, all right, guys, switch to the next person. So they switched the cameras to the other person who was sitting around the table. So I went home thinking I've got 4 angles, and turned out I only had 3 angles because somebody had switched, but they'd switched to the same person that somebody had already filmed. And I was like, oh my God, there was a little tiny detail. And luckily, we were able to go back and film it, even though the actor had left. We went back and filmed it. We only filmed it from one angle.
Yeah.
And we had somebody else sort of playing the role.
I think one of the hardest things
the
is
middle.
eye lines.
Yeah.
Knowing where to tell the actor where to look and
Right,
stuff.
right,
'Cause
right.
So many directions.
Exactly.
Camera movements. and
Exactly.
stuff.
Exactly. So
very technical.
Whereas theatre, all we have to do is get the actors to the point. I just focus on acting. Focus on acting. I don't have to worry about all these tiny little details. Like where they are on the stage, that matters. The props, that matters. The
You said
clothing, that matters.
these actors brought a lot of their own character to your.
Yeah.
Did you want that?
So
Did you want them?
yeah, I mean, so for me, when I write, I like to have a little bit of, what do you call it? The sort of the flavor of the actor.
Yeah.
And so what happens usually is I actually haven't finished the script by the time I got the actors. I've usually got like maybe 3/4 of the way through or half of the way through, and then I'll start to have the person in, because that usually will kind of, when they've sort of blended the actor and the character, that's when I'll sort of, I know what should be their end. I know what should be the end of their character arc, or I know what would be best and how that character would interact with somebody else. It makes it a lot easier once you've got, for me, the human being as well.
Yeah. No, and I've also found I've written and directed a couple of short films myself, and probably the best thing is when the actor actually comes to you with a recommendation that you agree with. That maybe you didn't really think of, like a character switch or something that they have a different perspective of, and it's it's funny when you're written and directed it, because you've kind of been a part of the whole process, and when they just see it from a completely different perspective, there's a little bit of, there's a weird rock and hard place there, because I'm kind of is the writing not strong enough to sort of create a real strong picture?
Sure.
How do you find that? Do you think it's, I suppose if you're saying you're leaving it real open, you want the interpretation too, but is there, as a director, you also must want to protect your ideas a little bit at times as well? Or?
Well, to an extent, because at the same time, I also am aware of the fact that I can be wrong, right? And my vision can be a little bit confused at times. And I really want people to let me know when I've confused it. And I feel I'm 30 now, I've had a lot of life experience, I've had a lot of writing experience. And if I can be told how I may be misinterpreting something, or how it's not really blending, or what the reasons were, that for me is good. It's a good thing, So one of the things that we did when we first did My What Is Yours is I said, anytime if I say anything that's corny, let me know. If it's lame, let me know, because one thing I really want to avoid, especially when you're at the local level, is doing something that's cliche or just straight garbage. Straight garbage. You know what I mean? Something
just
too
another
much.
one of those things.
Too much. And you're just no, it's too much, man. So if we can get to the end point, there's an end point in My One Is Yours. I'm not going to reveal what that was, but my friend said, you said to let you know if this is corny, and I'm sorry, but that's corny. And I was like, okay, you're right. Okay, and we redirected the ending somewhere else. So I can be open. I think I'll always be the person who makes the final decision. And there is times when I have to say, no, great idea, thank you, but we are going to go this way. But luckily, I've been blessed with a lot of good actors who have always kind of like, worked together with me. I've not actually had any clashes with the actors really, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah. Any actors clash with each other?
That definitely comes into it. That definitely comes into it, and that's why, it's so hard to produce and direct and do everything as well, because you sort of like you have so much love for the project, and then those clashes that might happen between actors or any kind of issue that comes from actors makes it difficult, because you're not just managing like high level actors and everyone's getting paid the right amount of money. You're working with you have a specific amount of money and you're not getting paid for every hour. So if I say, oh, we have to stay for another hour, or can we stay for another hour, is everyone cool with that? That's a little bit of almost like you're imposing on them, and I understand that, which is why I don't really do it too much. But just the whole pressures of working towards the end goal
Reminds me of soccer training.
Yeah.
When they say you have to stay back.
Yeah, it's just stressful, and you have to also manage your own stress as well, because as a director, I've always been someone who is like, as I am as a teacher, is you have to come always in the best mood. You can't be like not in the mood one day, and as the leader, you have to be like that rock. Like we've got to get this job done. What's your concerns? We also be positive. So you kind of have to be this kind of like older brother kind of image, I suppose.
The day that I met you, that was the first time I saw you like directing.
Yeah.
Like, you were so in the zone. It's really interesting to see, because I haven't seen you direct like other days.
Sure.
That first time you're intense, like telling everyone how to go. Like, it was great.
Yeah, that's cool. What again? But part of that was also Martell, who's the dramaturg of that day. She's great as well, and she sees the vision. But as I said, I think it comes down to like, you have to really appreciate the fact that we're on that local level. Everyone's giving themselves. Yeah, we're getting paid a little bit, but really it's not enough for what we're actually doing. And the fact that like without the people, you wouldn't have anything. And I think that's the thing about like being a writer director, is you can't be like a narcissist. You have to be like caring. You have to be understanding. You have to be this kind of like within with human beings.
So many musicians that are local think they're the top shit.
Oh man!
Straight away, it's like nobody knows you.
It's a plague.
Yeah.
That's good that you're humble though.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that I cut you off before when I asked about your, I suppose, inspirations in terms of media. Tell me about your inspirations in terms of media, but also your inspirations in life to bring you this kind of mindset as well.
All right, cool. All right, so, well, I'll say one of the first things that sort of inspired me, Spike Lee movies. Spike Lee movies, that was for me, like, wow, because I'd seen a lot of black people on film before, but I don't know if they had been written by black people. So Spike Lee was huge in terms of like, oh wow, we can show the world that we're living in an interesting way. It wasn't like Boys in the Hood, which is obviously a bit depressing and dark and gang and all the rest of it. Spike Lee had characters which were all different people he'd met in life and from his neighborhood, and that was sort of like powerful to me. We talked about this the other day, is August Wilson, the playwright who wrote Fences with Denzel Washington in it. That was, for me, that was powerful, because the main character reminded me so much of like older men who I met in my life, like my dad, who go on these monologues and talk about things. But I always thought the word monologue meant standing on the stage saying, some sort of Shakespeare line or whatever. That's what I thought it was. And it's like, that is that, but monologue is also what we do day to day.
Yeah.
I mean, like maybe I'm doing a monologue right now. Do you know what I mean?
I was about to say,
So it's like, oh wow, it's kind of like making it kind of present. Like, it isn't, the theatre doesn't have to be all the way out here, or the art doesn't have to be all the way out here. It's in there every day. And so August Wilson's plays really impacted me, like being able to just drink a beer, talk with your friends, like in a sort of a local bar, and he would make that into like some dialogue into the thing. It's like, the
Anything
dialogue's
can be
happening.
interesting.
Yeah, the dialogue is happening every day. It's just that sometimes the words, we're disconnected with what's actually happening.
I think Tarantino is famous for dialogue. Like, his movies are all action, but it's the dialogue that everyone loves.
But on that note too, like his dialogue's so it's crisp and it's clean, but it's so fake at the same time. Like we were talking also the other day about we were talking about there's a film I've seen, Skeleton Twins. Are you familiar?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig, so it's a Hollywood movie. But like what I really like about it is it has, in any given scene, it'll flow up from a comedy down to a bit of a drama, just by the flick of a line. And that reminds me so much of real life. Like sometimes someone will just say something. You'll wake up fine, you'll go to work fine, it'll be a sunny day. One line will change the mood for a little bit. another line will change the mood to something else a little bit later. And it's like that's something I find plays do really well specifically. But it's, I don't know, that's the kind of the drama and the writing that I feel really gets me as well. Like another one's actually Short Term 12. I rewatched that the other day. It's it's an incredible film. It's about like young kids in a like stay between home, or they're like foster kids waiting to get parents. Just another case of that, just like really real and real authentic. And I find that's what creates the connect with me anyway.
Yeah,
like
for me as well, the authenticity is the key, and especially when you're coming, like if you're writing in Britain, Australia, like we're not America, we're not Hollywood, we're not any of those things. So like if you're trying to emulate that, it's kind of like it's just kind of stupid. Like we don't, but it's not the culture that Britain, Australia, like Europe has. It's not that kind of same thing. Which actually, as you say, one of the inspirations that I actually forgot to mention was the British Office.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that was actually quite impactful.
I was going to say your inspirations aren't really British. Like, is there much around the Spike Lee era? Is there much like Black English content at all?
Good question. Nice. Ooh, I mean, there's a
I really can't think of
there's
too
a
much
really famous film called Babylon, which is like I think from the early 80s, which is quite an impactful film, but nothing. I don't think nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Nothing that just like grabbed the culture a little bit as well. Like,
yeah, I'm trying to think. Babylon apparently was very accurate to its period and the time when my dad grew up with. It was a very, very like authentic portrayal of people who were either born in Jamaica or whose parents were from Jamaica, and that sort of that culture clash between being Black, British or Caribbean, and then the white people and the racism existed at the time.
Yeah.
So that was quite a powerful film, and I really liked that and the grittiness of it. And obviously, Kidulthood was massive as well. Kidulthood, which was
I've heard of.
You've heard it, yeah. That was really powerful because it was putting black people on film in a way that seemed really, really like toxic, I suppose, but was accurate to the lives that people were living. And I think the guy who was writing it tried to knock on everyone's door and try to get in. They were like, great script, but we just don't want to put it out there. It's not something we want to do. So I guess Kidulthood and Babylon were like quite powerful, but I think more so than that, I think The Office, British Office, it was inspirational because it was exactly how life is. Like it's like you add a little bit of flair to it because it can't be exactly normal life because that's not that interesting. Even with documentary film, you got to kind of frame it a little bit differently. But The British Office, I'm rewatching it at the moment, and it's so good. It's so good. It's like it's authentic. People talk as people talk. They try to protect their ego in particular ways. They try to show off in particular ways, and it's all that.
The reactions too, like when someone does something stupid, people don't just sort of like, they're a bit like,
exactly,
really?
Exactly.
You know,
and also the color grade of The Office is really good as well because it's like, wow, that's what life looks like.
Yeah.
Which is like, and I think that's the important thing is you don't have like got a Marvel movie and it's all the top and it's all like really, really colorful and Hollywood, and I'd like to have more of like that grittiness of just every day. There was a movie, a TV show called I May Destroy You recently. Michaela Cole, I believe her name is. A couple of years ago, she was sitting on a toilet and she was talking on the phone. The door was open and her housemates are walking past and talking to her as she's on the phone, right? And I thought that this actually was one of the images that I took when I went to My Way Is Yours. Like that's a grittiness, that's a realism that we don't generally see. I mean, I wouldn't have the door open or whatever, but there's a sort of authenticity to that experience that I'm like, yes, it needs to speak to the everyday,
Yeah. Speaking of your projects, actually, are there anywhere people can see any of your projects that you've done?
Yeah, so My Win Is Yours is on YouTube.
Yep.
So just literally My Win Is Yours, and then that's it. And Dominoes and Rum, we might give it out to people who want a link, but it's a film theatre thing, which is not exactly as you'd want it to be, right?
So back to them, what's the actual connection? Is it the story leads on like
because Dominoes and Rum?
Yeah.
No, completely related. Unrelated. Completely unrelated.
Okay.
It's just like literally one was. I guess I have three experiences. I suppose is the Jamaican experience, the Australian experience, and the British experience. And this speaks to the Jamaican. Dominoes and Rum is the Jamaican experience, and My Win Is Yours is the Australian experience. I suppose.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about that actually more next.
Yeah.
Like just about your cultural identity.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what's the question?
Yeah, what's specifically?
Just, I never knew any Jamaicans really until I met you. So, like, I think most people in Australia probably don't know any. Like, how's it been like as a creative?
we were talking about this actually in geography class the other week with kids. Is like there is no wave of migration here. You know, it's only pockets. It's one individual.
Yeah.
You know, one.
Is there more in
family.
any Australian city?
I think more in Sydney and Melbourne, but again, I doubt there would be a wave. Maybe a couple of like families, like a brother and sister who've got kids or something, you know.
Yeah.
But there is no wave because everyone comes from some different background. They could be coming from American, they're like Jamaican Americans. They could be British Jamaicans.
Yeah.
They could be Jamaican from Jamaica. And when you're meeting each other, we don't have. If there's not like we have our language, right? But how close are you to that language? For example, my dad came from there, but he left in the 60s. So my connection with the patois is obviously stuff that I had to learn myself going to Jamaica. Aurora is my friend. Aurora, an artist. She's half Jamaican as well, but her dad is born in England, so he doesn't really have as much connection as my dad. And then I've got mates in the UK who their grandparents moved to England. So what does it mean to be Jamaican outside of Jamaica? It's such a confusing topic, right?
But I guess when you're in England, though, you connect to more people
Yeah.
from similar backgrounds.
Yeah, but that's because we're
more there.
we're British Jamaican. Like you know what I mean? We're British Jamaican, and that's different to American Jamaican and all the rest of it. So when I was my life has always been moving between different countries. But when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I wasn't around Jamaican people when I was like between the ages of like 13 and 17, but I was around African Australians. And they weren't really true Australian at the time. There were migrants who had just come a few years prior, so who had broken English. And I lived in an area called Yeronga, which was very multicultural. So you had people from the Middle East, you had people from Africa, you had some islander people as well. And then you had sort of working class white people. And some middle class white people, of course, at the time, because it ended up becoming a gentrified area. But I grew up in a sort of multicultural environment, but it wasn't Jamaican at all. You know, that's something I had to go and connect with again when I got to the age of 18, when I went back to the UK.
Yeah. I reckon that's a big part of your storytelling, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Being Jamaican.
Oh yeah,
Well, I just know from Domino's.
Yeah, I suppose so. I
Huge
mean,
part of it.
I think being Jamaican is an important part of my identity. I'm a Jamaican citizen. I lived there for only a short time, 5 months of my life, but it was very impactful because I suppose I was a little bit of a hippie before that. You know, I was sort of a bit of a dreamer, bit like, oh yeah, things will work out. All I'll do for the rest of my life will be to work in cafes and, play some music and, drink coffee and just be like some chilled out artist or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas going to Jamaica kind of was like, bing, like wake up call, like the reality is like mad, like people are suffering in this world. Poverty exists, food insecurity, healthcare issues. It's endless, and that sort of was very eye-opening to me, as well as the cultural aspect as well. So, so I think after that point, once I went, my life sort of was a bit more like, I don't know, I sort of embraced a little bit more of the Jamaican perspective, I suppose. I mean, I had a little bit of a Jamaican perspective because of my dad and the way he is, but I sort of reinforced some of those ideals, I suppose.
You don't have to like necessarily be from somewhere to open your eyes. Like
No.
once you visit different countries.
Yeah. But at the same time,
Changes your life.
I feel like, I mean, because you went to Ethiopia when you were after school, but I sometimes feel like there's a level of, sometimes there can be, and not in your example, but I think there can be a disconnect between real suffering and you go on a holiday, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
because I had the developing nation I'd been to before Jamaica was Morocco, and that was the first developing nation I went to, and I didn't necessarily realize that there was suffering because I didn't have relatives from there. So I met people and they were like, we need money and stuff, and I'm like, oh, you guys are fine. Like that's how I saw it. I was like, you guys are kind of like, yeah, but you got a beautiful life. Look at the sun, look at your language, look at the food and the clothes. You're good.
Yeah.
It's only when I went to Jamaica and I was around my family members and sort of seeing how, without going too much in depth about how their lives are, but being around that and seeing it and really imagining what my life would have been like had things been different. That was kind of like harrowing in a way.
Yeah, that's why I don't like bloggers sometimes that go and say like everyone in this country's so happy.
Yeah.
Like you don't know the real struggles that they go through.
Exactly.
You just see it for 2 days.
Yeah, and you're in the holiday vibe, actually doing like,
Yeah.
oh my god, wow.
Exactly.
Like,
Everyone eats so nice.
You're not
and
thinking that every day.
Yeah. So what elements of Jamaican culture did you pull for Domino's and Rum? And to follow on to that, like where exactly did you draw it from outside of your own personal experiences, if it was later in life that you had to
cool.
sort of embrace it?
Okay, so Domino's and Rum is based on a fictional island called Colibri. And the reason why it was a fictional island as opposed to Jamaica is because obviously the actors weren't Jamaican, and I didn't really want to, I didn't want to make them Jamaican because that would be too much of a sort of culture imitation. And so we had our own version of it, and through that I could also embellish it with a little bit of a different kind of spirituality, different kind of mythology, which would be more creative, right? Because Jamaica, I understand it, but there's many elements which I don't understand. And like, for example, we have a thing called a 9-night, which has to do with like the way we get leading up to a funeral, right? And the party before the funeral. And so that is something that I understand, but I don't fully understand these things. They didn't come intuitively. These are some things, there's so much depth into the folklore and the mythologies around it that I thought, okay, well, why don't we just have an island and I can bring a lot of what I know, but I won't make it exactly, because I'll be wrong. I'll be wrong about something here. Undoubtedly, someone will say that's not exactly how it was. And so it's sort of like a version of it. And on top of that, we also, in terms of the writing, I interviewed a lot of people from developing nations about their experience going back to the developing nations. So for example, if they were from Philippines, so they've lived in Australia and they've gone back, or they've lived in Britain and they've gone back. And so what I did was I tried to create an amalgamation of all of their experiences, as well as my experience in Jamaica and what I knew about Jamaica, and make it its own place. So for example, there's like a line in it where the character said, the gods would cry if they saw what we have become. And the gods would cry, that's not something that they would say in Jamaica, right? Because in Jamaica, it's either Christian or Rasta or sort of agnostic sort of thing. They wouldn't meet multiple gods. But I sort of like the idea of almost like the Nigerian or Greek or Roman sort of, or Egyptian gods. I like the concept of that. So I said the gods would cry, and so I used that line. So it was sort of to make it more authentic to my creative writing style, as opposed to trying to imitate exactly to the T, because I just would have been wrong about a lot of things.
I like how you did a lot of research though.
Cool. Yeah, well, there's going back to you said apart from my own experience, what else did I do? Yeah, it was just the research. So there is obviously some natural disasters in Dominoes and Rum, and that came from looking at how natural disasters affect a place like Jamaica, and which natural disasters were impactful, and how do people recover from that. So that's part of it, and then also another TV show called The Wire. Yeah, The Wire was really good at addressing a lot of political, social institutions, so not just the issue itself, but
specifically school in one season, right?
Yeah. Season 3, I think, or 4.
Four, maybe.
Yeah, so school, police, criminality, the politicians, and whatever else. Or journalism. So, so for me, I wanted to, with Dominoes Rum, to kind of touch on those issues. So I had to do a lot of research about what's the healthcare system like, what's this kind of system like, but not detract from the story, because the story is the most important thing, but have little moments that should be make the audience reflect on those things. And if they miss it, then it doesn't really matter, because the story is the most important thing.
Yeah. So I know you guys have been working for about a year, I believe, on a boxer's journey documentary, essentially. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what inspired that? Why you thought that was such an important thing to capture, and what are you hoping to get from it too?
So Raf contacted me at one point and said, it'd be good for us to work on something, and I think you might have mentioned documentaries, and I said, yeah, I had this idea for a documentary sitting there for about a year that I've never really sought to pursue, which was the story of Abdou Soko, who is a Senegalese French boxer who moved to Australia in 2019, and he speaks very little English, but he is the super middleweight champion of Australia at the time. And this very interesting story where he's sort of this guy who's tall, dark-skinned guy, very little English, in amongst this very Aussie atmosphere at the boxing gym, and all the people are sort of supporting him and getting him, basic things that he wouldn't be able to get because of the language barrier. And he's a sort of shy individual and is a very calm individual, but when he's in the ring, he's like just, hard hitting, he knocks people out and all the rest of it. And I thought this is a perfect idea for a story. And it also kind of ties in with a lot of the stuff I've been doing in terms of showing people of the African Australian experience, because the African Australian experience, as we spoke about before, is not limited to just those skilled migrants from Zimbabwe or refugees coming from South Sudan. It's anybody of African descent who has some sort of experience here. So his experience is an African-Australian experience, and it's just a different side of it. And I knew that a lot of people were fascinated by him, but didn't know how to get to know him. They'd see him and they'd say, "Oh, he's a cool guy," but come and talk to him, and he, doesn't have really much to say. So I thought it'd be great to, make a story about that.
Yep. And I suppose, I don't know if you want to put too much pressure on like a release date or anything, but like how far into the process are you now? And then, what's the ultimate goal with it? Are you kind of...
There's complications with the editing, but it's coming along.
Yeah. So we're in the editing process at the moment, and we'd love to have it out by late this year, but at the same time, we've got to figure out whether we're doing the film festival route.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing with documentary or any film really, is you get everyone excited through Instagram, and everyone's like, "Yeah, cool, if you finished it, like, we have finished it. Well, can we watch it?" No, you can't watch it.
Yeah.
You've got to wait till we travel these film festivals. So definitely within the next year, it will be there for everyone to watch on YouTube. But for the moment, we're just sort of sitting on it and just working with it.
Documentaries really can take forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose it's also one of those things where like you don't really know, the beginning of the story, but you don't know the end of the story until you're there. Sometimes the journey changes
Didn't
entirely.
end exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like sometimes you might not go, things might not go exactly how you plan, or it's not even how you plan. It's like how much of the morale changes after certain events happen as well. Like, that's obviously going to be a tough thing to imagine.
To say, like, I actually paid for my own ticket to watch him fight, like a huge fight, the Matchbox one. Like, I was so invested in it. Like, seeing him lose actually was really heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
Like, I felt so connected to him filming everything.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to speak about that?
Okay, so we filmed for about 4 months, 5
At
months,
that time,
something like that. And so we were getting really close to Abdu over the time period, and we were at the biggest fight of his life, which was the Zone show in Australia, which was promoted by one of the biggest boxing promoters, if not the biggest boxing promoter, Eddie Hearn. And we spoke to Eddie Hearn briefly, and it was this amazing moment where he was going to fight the best in Australia. He's got one belt, the other guy's got the other belt, and they're going to fight for who's the best number one in Australia. And it didn't go as planned, and we really didn't expect it to go that way. And I guess it made filming a little bit difficult after that, but it was quite heartbreaking. I felt like family members in the ring, like, "Oh my God, no, it's happening! Like, how can this happen?" And so that's it really.
Like, it's beautiful seeing him win the fight before that.
Oh
on
yeah,
camera.
Yeah.
That was
amazing, but that was really sad.
So speak a little bit on like morality then through the creative process, because I mean, something about what we may take for granted is like sometimes our projects may take 2-3 days from like start to finish. Things like plays, things like short films, things like hour and a half long feature films. You can't bash that out in a week, or at least even if the production's a week, you've thought about it for months beforehand. You're thinking about it for months afterwards. How do you manage?
I don't see you wanting to do like really short projects, would you?
I'd be open to it, but I find it so difficult. I've literally only ever watched one short film that I've really loved.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's 12 minutes, a movie called Adele, African-Australian film, amazing. Yeah. But I just find it so difficult because I'm a words guy. I need to have words. And so I'm not really great with just visual and stuff. Like, I appreciate it, but things that really resonate with me is dialogue, people arguing, people talking, people whatever. And so the idea of making a short thing that actually works, I've not yet come to, get it. I mean, we did a short play last year. We did a couple of short plays last year, which were only 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and they were pretty good. Potentially they could be short project, but then again, the writing process and all the rest of it took, quite a while to do. But yeah, I'd be down for some short stuff. I'll be down for that. But
I suppose the question there was more like, based on the morality of it. So I suppose like, do you have people you consult when you come up with an idea first of all to know if you should engage it further, and then after that, once you're through the process, like how do you speak a little bit on people around?
I immediately contact my friend Kevin Fredman, and Kevin Fredman he's from Botswana. He is really, really, really a really great sort of person to bounce ideas off, because he's like seriously intelligent. He understands art. He understands writing. He hasn't written anything himself, but he's really good at understanding what are we talking about in terms of the writing. So some writers, when they go to it, it's all about their feeling. I want to express this thing. And I'm not really like that. I really am thinking about it as the structure. Like, what are we doing there? It's like the puppeteer. Like, you got to have some sort of skill. Like, is this, are we foreshadowing something here? Is this right? Have we fallen into some cliches here? Have we earned the audience trust to give them this? Have we earned this moment of drama? Have we given enough, scaffolding, or sort of like, have we given enough of the character for us to have some sort of downfall? Or would the audience not like that downfall because they don't know the character enough? So we work with the rules of writing, as well as just being able to play out the ideas and who does this remind us of and who does this character remind us. So I always contact him. And then once we've sort of had that brainstorm, I'll go away for a while. That's when I have my introverted moment, and I'll be writing whatever. And I'll bring it back to him, and I just try to see his reaction, because I'm really into just seeing the reaction. And as he's reading, if I'm starting to see him smile, or he's, oh, this is it. And that's when I'm like, got it. Definitely. But I don't really work by myself. I'm not somebody who's able to just work. I'm very extroverted. As I said, that's probably why I'm a teacher. Like, I need to have some engagement with the wider, network to feel excited about doing it, And if I see somebody going, that's interesting, that's what I wanted to know, or, I'm like,
so you're not overprotective about your writing?
No, not really.
Scared to?
Not really, no, because it's all about the reaction. You know what I mean? It's like some people write and they go, I'm meaningful, but I think there's a lot of time because they haven't had a lot of experience writing, so they think, I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to be this, and that's what I'm going to do, and they start, oh, that time when my dad abused me, it's like, lame, like, don't put that in, bro. Don't put that in. Like, maybe put hints of that in. Maybe at a time when you're ready to tell that story, but you've got to go through the rules of writing first. It's like someone say, oh, I'm going to be in the NBA because I love basketball. It's like, no, you have to go through the rigor of that, and then you can get to that level. So writing, what's the most interesting thing that you can write about in your neighborhood? Like, you know what I mean? Let's have your neighborhood and then a dragon comes in. Can you write a story about that? Are you able to? Oh, it's not my kind of film. Then try it, write it. See if you can actually make that engaging. And if you can't make that engaging, maybe you need more skill, and skill is the key. So I talk to Kev because he just understands skill. He understands the wider picture. It's not about, like, basically your emotions are cool, but they need to be used when they are needed. There's time when the puppeteer is going to
you don't
find that
think
flow.
Like, this is the theme straight away. I want to tell this message. I want to, like, you don't think like that.
I think about, does the characters have a three-dimensional aspect?
Yeah.
Or
So character comes first for you before any story comes. You think of a
Sounds like
character,
the audience
or
are the most important.
Yeah, I think
Thinking about
it's audience. Does the character three-dimensional? Is the theme is like kind of less important for me, because it's more like,
That just comes naturally.
like, am I excited about this character? Because like, we had a character the other day, like, a few years ago actually. We didn't actually make this into anything, but the character excited me. So it was the idea of, like, somebody who was a barber in Morocco, and he cuts people's hair, but he always is available. So you could call him at the midnight and he'd be able to cut your hair, and he had this very charismatic persona, but at home his mother was, like, sick and disabled. So there was a juxtaposition between how he would be with his mother versus how he would be outside in the community, and, like, the boy's just kind of nature of it, and how people would think that he's got the best life and he's always there and he understands people. But that was a character, even now, it still excites me. Like, oh, what would he do in that thing? So if I'm kind of excited about, oh, where's this going to go? Where would this lead? Then I can kind of say, okay, yeah, all right. Whereas if the character are just pawns for your message, it's like,
we see that too much nowadays.
You've missed the point of the storytelling. It's the story, it's the love, it's the excitement. Like, as I said, like, when you're playing music, like, if you're playing the piano, we don't say you can play the piano because I have emotion. You have to go through the skill, and then there's moments where you feel it. There's moments when the pianist will feel the keys, and it's meaningful, but they've put all the work in to get to that level.
Well, it's like when they say a character writes itself. Like, I remember the last attempt I would have made at a script was, like, the first feature-length one I was actually committed to.
Yeah.
And it would have been maybe at, like, the 45 page, about 45 pages in, I started writing some character for this dialogue, and just instantly felt like, no, they wouldn't say this. This just isn't.
Yeah,
like, I had to
exactly.
change the scene because of what had come before it as well.
Exactly. It has to be honest and true and genuine to the character, not of you, to the character.
Then the issue is when you wake up every day and think they'd say something different. Like,
Have you had that? Have you had that experience?
yeah, like, you just can't commit to anything.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there is a time where I think any creative thing that you make, you're going to look at it in hindsight and think of something you could have added.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to eventually just, like, put a lock and key. And I guess having accountability, like having someone to show it to, having audiences as well. Like, if you're saying that you've been writing plays as people have come on, I'm sure you've sort of been, like, pretty up to the deadline as you've been finalizing things with the play too. So do you think, like, having that accountability has probably helped you.
Oh, massively.
Like with
Massively. Because if you've got a deadline, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like to write it and what?
So you don't just make passion projects that sit in your closet and no one sees, or
I haven't yet.
Okay.
No, because for me it's all about like, I can be a bit of a procrastinator, and if I don't see an end point, then I just
yeah.
and it becomes nothing, and you just drift off, and
Do you
nothing.
have like a
matters.
dream project?
I think I did. I kind of did my dream projects.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with to say that. I feel like I did my dream projects in a way. I would obviously love to get to the higher level and tell more stories, but if I was to like go outside and get hit by a car or whatever, like I'd be happy with what I left.
That's great.
I mean, you'd have to finish Stumble of the Rum editing, but I'd be happy with what I left because I feel like they're true to what I.
That's really
know.
good.
But they're good starts. I mean, I'd love to go higher and see what else is out there.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with what I created. Obviously, the dream is obviously higher level, everything. Script supervisor, makeup person, all the rest of it. But I feel like the love that I've received from the actors and people involved with the two bigger projects we did, I'm really feel
No, I think that's amazing because everyone wants like this huge goal and thinks like they can't be happy or they haven't achieved shit until they're there.
Sure.
It's like you can like.
Yeah.
We love watching our own videos.
Yeah,
spending
exactly.
hours.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's even when people sort of go into business, and like they think success is like having $1 million kind of thing. And like, man, for me, if I can have a roof over my head and food in my stomach, like that's kind of all it is. Like, it's
It's deep.
Yeah, that is deep. But it's like that's it doesn't need to be something that like takes over the world and buys you some like giant mansion or anything. Especially if you get a kick from it, which sounds like one of the most important things to you. But I guess, what's next then? What's in the weeds?
Okay, cool. So I'm going to be doing a show later in the year at Back Dog Arts, which will be a back-to-back showing of two shorter plays. One is called The Old Man and the Robot, which I performed at La Boîte, part of the assembly program earlier this year. So that was originally a monologue, but it will be two-man play. So the idea of a robot, which has got an upgrade where it becomes self-conscious and sort of the immediate experiences of what life would feel like if you already had the intelligence, but you're only getting for the first time the sensation of what life would be like. And then we're doing a show called The Double Tax, which is a sort of inspired by Seinfeld sort of thing, like a sitcom sort of format type of comedy where it's not so deep, because usually my other things they're comedies and then they kind of have these moments of it kind of hurt me a little bit, whereas this one is a bit more just bubbly and a bit more lighthearted. So we're gonna go back to back with those, and then we'll get on to writing another film. We want to do another like a 20-minute, 30-minute film.
Yeah, wow.
One creative project after the next, and then try and get everyone to give you as much recognition as possible. So that, like, you just want use every project you do to help you get more and like grow.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like also what I don't take for granted is the experiences that the actors get out of it. Because a lot of the actors themselves, like they'll say, "Oh, I'm really connected with this character." Or, they want me to write the character as it should. They don't want me, kill the character off or something. Nice. I feel happy about this. So that, and also just to said, seeing the audience like after the event and and everyone's kind of like happy and talking. That for me is like I feel like the old man in the background, just like.
When I saw you guys at Domino's and Rum, you guys definitely seem like a family. Like, must be sad sometimes. Like months later, you guys miss that.
I've kind of got beyond that. I used to, like when I first did my Wednesdays, I used to think that this is our team, this is going to be for life, sort of thing. But now it's like teaching. You connect with the kids. Some kids you really like, but they've got to have their time. Then you move on, and you don't sort of dwell on the play was really good. Like I want to live in the past, like. And then crazy, like you gotta keep moving, and if you want that buzz of like the thing, there's another show you can do. It won't be the same, but even so, if you were to do the same thing again, it would be a different energy. So just keep making more things, I suppose. I don't know.
I agree with that. I feel like whenever anyone are like chasing a previous feeling, it's because they haven't got the next high from the next like big job or the next exciting project that they're on. But I suppose to wrap it up, what we've asked everyone else so far is, what kind of advice would you give to anyone who wants to pursue any sort of creative endeavor?
Any sort of creative, or like more specifically what I do?
Well, we can speak in your field. Yeah. Okay. What about writing?
Because I feel like I'm a little bit lost with other stuff like music, for example.
Yep.
But I would say with writing, the important thing is writing doesn't have to be a lame, nerdy thing. You know, like writing can be some cool stuff. Like, you know, you experience something, someone says something to you, boom, boom, you have a little back and forth, you write it down. It doesn't have to be something that's like only for the nerds. You know, you go to like bookstores and everyone's nerds in there. You know, like middle-aged women. Like last was like, oh, this the newest novel. Like, that's dead. That you know, but that doesn't mean that they have the monopoly on writing. Like we can still write our cool things that are happening. You know, like, and there's so many stories that haven't been told, but people assume that it's not worth telling because it's not Hollywood. And it's like, if you're still looking for Hollywood, you're a fool basically. You got to go with what's genuine to you. Like, for example, like, you know, a story about someone in the Philippines, you know, and like thousands of stories that could come out of the Philippines. Interesting stories, and not just migration stories, but stories about, like, you know, the martial arts of the Philippines and what goes into that. I love story of the Philippines, you know.
That's what we always say.
It's like,
we want to see stories that aren't told a million times.
Yeah,
Like,
there's that, and the thing is, not only is there different stories to tell, but there's different story patterns, right? So the structure I use is a pretty traditional narrative structure. You know, the heroes, what's it called, the hero's journey. That's also, or like the 3-act, you know, whatever. But if you go into like the Greek mythology, there's a different kind of structure there. There's not always a moral tale to everything. Things just happen. You can go into, you know, some like Nigerian mythology and the way that they structure stories. The same kind of narrative that we're learning about, or maybe it comes from Shakespeare, and a lot of other stuff prior to that, and now we have like condensed version of it. But there's so many other versions of storytelling that exist. And so for me, you don't have to, I have to write and come with some cliche dumb thing. Like, you're thinking that because you watch too much of the cliche things, and you're thinking that you need to do that. Like,
that's why I think part of what you're saying is like people need to get inspiration from all places.
Yeah, exactly.
Spread it out. Listen to music in different languages. Watch international movies.
Exactly.
It's like even when we talk about uncovering certain people's stories, like when you see, I don't know, some like traditional dance that happens in some Asian country, and you're just like, holy shit, I can't believe people are doing this. Like this organized, like I was showing you footage of like the sand mandala. Have you seen that before?
No, I
and
haven't.
it's like the Buddhists, they just like blow sand or like drop sand through this little thing, and it becomes this giant, probably like 2 meter by 2 meter wide mandala, just made of sand. And then as soon as it's finished, they just have people come along, just like brush it up, just destroy the whole thing. And it's kind of like, man, there's people, like you walk down the street in the CBD and you see people rushing so much, and it's like there's people just taking their time making these sand mandalas. It's like it gives you such a different perspective on like what even matters to different people.
But I think even with that, like, you don't just get it from movies or writing. You can travel, talk to different people, take trains, everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get the experiences. And I think like the important thing is just don't be lame with the damn thing. Like, if you want to be right, like genuinely say, yeah, I'm gonna go right, then set a deadline and go and do it. You know what I mean? If all the other stuff about like, you know, I have to be dramatic, I have to be this, it's better to tell an interesting story that's interesting than a story that's like deep. Because it's so easy to get that wrong. It's easier actually to just write an interesting story, like something that, you know, like for example, I thought about this idea the other day. I thought, what was if a woman was in like a park and she's calling to a dog, but there's no dog there, you know, and you go, like, and I haven't even got any further than that, but like the idea of like a dog that may or may not be there, like, is it invisible, or is it figment of her imagination, or is that the guy just can't see it until he's ready? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of potential there, but that already has the seeds of interest. Like, what is that? What's the next thing there? That's better than two people, one person talking to the other person, and then he stabs the other person, the person dies on the street. Dead. It's dead. It's dead. It's rubbish. You know what I mean? But yeah. So that's my advice. I don't know. Just keep going for it. If you really want to do it, just do it.
Do you believe you have to write what you know?
To an extent, I think that the phrase is a little bit tricky to.
It's a hard one, because how does sci-fi become a thing? Like, how do dystopian stories? But you know what I'm going to say is like, write what you know in as much as you know about the human experience. You should write about the human experiences that you know. Like, don't try to write something that maybe is too far outside of the human experience that you know. Like, don't talk about like, you know, postpartum depression if you never had any connection to it. That would be forced. Like, no, to stay away from that. But the human experience, you know, we all know what like heartbreak would feel like. We all know what like, I suppose, joy.
That's funny about the heartbreak. Like, my old stepdad used to say to me, like, you really need to experience heartbreak before he'd tell me like you need to go and experience a good relationship.
Right.
You need to experience the depressing things in life.
Yeah.
Well, I used to feel that way. That's funny. I used to just like want to feel every emotion. Like
Sure,
I just
sure.
want.
Okay.
I guess I viewed it as like
Right.
a checklist of 200 emotions or whatever, and it'd be like, right, I was that mad one day. This day I was mad enough to like want to punch someone. This day I was mad enough to like want to scream, kind of thing. And then it's like, I used to want all these things. I used to think it would be like exciting to have drama in relationships and even things like that until I actually had an argument with a girlfriend, and I was like, this is the worst thing ever. Like I don't want this every day. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth. I think that's what you mean when you say you need life experience.
Yeah,
It's more the emotions, not even that you experience,
Yeah.
but that you see someone else experience. Like when you
exactly.
properly feel, you don't have to grieve. You don't have to be grieving to understand what grief feels
Yeah,
like. So it's just, it's being in situations, talking to these different people.
Yeah.
But I think that's when you.
Well, making a documentary is like the closest you get to live someone else's life.
100%.
Without actually doing it.
100%.
It's awesome.
Yeah, beautiful. All right. Well, I think we can wrap it up there. It's been a great talk. Sure, we could go for long.
Give Marty his.
Yeah, we should actually shout out one time to at least Catalog Music, Marty in Fortitude Valley. He's letting us use the space. It's a pretty nice space, isn't it? There's lots of beautiful records everywhere, and it's just an absolute legend letting us use the space. But most of all, big, huge thank you to our guest, Prince. Thanks for coming on, brother. It was great to talk to you,
Thanks for having me.
and all the best.
Sorry, man. Sorry.